We are
All right, we'll call the meeting to order at 6:03 p.m.
okay. So, good evening, everyone. We actually have a fairly, it looks like a short agenda, but there's a lot to talk about in some of these areas. So I wanted to make sure that we stayed on track here tonight. Let me minimize some things here and get out of the way. Our first item is public comment. We do have John Bush here as well, but I wanted to start. We did receive this letter. I received it today when I got into the office. I did forward it out after I scanned it. It is from Karen Epifano. The return address was a post office box in Clinton. This is just the letter we received, and I wanted to share it with the board members in public comment. We'll again put this as part of the record as well, that this was in the public comment, but this has been circulated to you, so you should have a copy of that in your email as well. If you do not, let me know and I will make sure it gets to you. So there is that. Our second public comment is from John Bush, and he has provided with for your convenience a letter as well as some pictures, and I will let him go ahead and talk on that. And Jennifer, being the vice chair, that's at your discretion.
I'm sorry, can you just repeat that last part? What is that discretion?
It's at your discretion as to when he starts and how long he has, and that's all that. It's up to you. You're as the chair.
Okay. So go ahead, Mr. Bush. Let's try and keep it to 5 minutes if we could this evening so we can stay on our agenda.
Well, thank you, Chair. I will be very stretched to get this done in 5 minutes because there are substantive issues on which you may have questions. I want you all to know that I hold you respectfully in high regard, and I believe that our goals are very aligned, but I'm pointing out some immediate issues that require, I hope, your immediate attention, and that's why I may exceed 5 minutes, but I will be as swift as I possibly can. In my previous conversations with you commissioners, in my commenting to the board, I've always felt heard and that our goals are in agreement. However, in practice, there are 3 items I'm bringing to your attention on which I ask for your careful consideration and response. The first one's trail building. And you may wish to look at the pictures I sent as I described the situation. Yesterday on December 15th, I walked the new trails being built and was saddened and disheartened to see that the aggressive and destructive mechanized practices that have been so controversial in the past are being repeated. Specifically, there are many places where spoils from the grading have just been pushed on top of existing native slow-growing species, and trees have been whacked off and dumped on growing plants trailside, leaving a path of environmental destruction. Please see the photographs. I have a suggested solution. In this regard, I quote from page 2 of your trail construction management plan: design and create trails that are sensitive to wildlife habitat and that require minimal alteration to the property's landscape. I ask that you don't take my word for this, but rather that we visit the trails together for your evaluation and that trail building be stopped to avoid additional damage until the board has given stewardship consideration to current trail building practices. Also, the trail plan acknowledges the value of seeking third-party resources to advise how best to create the trails enjoyed by so many. Cleveland Hall, in her public comment in the previous meeting, suggested the board consult, actually the department consult with the Washington Trails Association and take advantage of their extensive expertise. I wonder if this suggestion has been followed. Ms. Hall further encouraged you to, quote, challenge existing practices and to build on your philosophy of sensitivity and awareness regarding the impacts on existing native plants. The second item is public safety and security, and feel free to interrupt me if you have questions or wish me to clarify, please. In the distant past, I'd seldom seen the parking lot gate of Trustlands Trails locked at dusk or locked at all. Thus, I was greatly encouraged to hear at your last meeting that it now is locked at dusk and will be secured. To confirm that this is the case in practice, I have visited the entry to Trustlands trails every night since November 19 and have documented that it is seldom locked at dusk, often not locked until much later, sometimes as late as 10 or 11 p.m., and sometimes not locked at all. We know that in the past, this area was subject to unauthorized overnight partying and other things that aren't permitted. It's important to understand that we in Pioneer Park are on a dead-end street. And in the case of fire, we have very limited evacuation methods. In the public comment section of the trail management plan, specific request was made for after-hours monitoring by county park employees and or law enforcement, and that rules banning off-leash dogs and prohibiting trapping be enforced. A suggested solution: establish reporting, written log of closing, and supervisorial procedures that ensure the security parameters established by the department are fulfilled. Further, dusk is a relative term that can be subjectively interpreted and varies seasonally. Right now, the days are so short and the weather damp so late, visitation is probably at very low census. However, in the summer, when twilight lasts longer, and the island population swells with others not necessarily as respectful of Park and Rec policy, I suggest that seasonally adjusted, specific closed-by times, adjusted by season dates, be posted and enforced. I also wonder, and don't need an answer right now, what the protocol is when closing time is passed and vehicles remain parked in the lot. The third item and last on my list is wildlife habitat. The many public comments you received stating the greatly increased appreciation and visitation of Trustlands trails substantiates my previous statement that in order to ensure quality, visitation, and preservation of natural habitat, a balance will need to be achieved. From your 2018 comprehensive plan, quote, most areas that would be considered for trail development on Whidbey Island are valuable wildlife habitat. I emphasize, with all this in mind, trail design and activity should be planned in a way that values the relationship between trail users and wildlife and considers the space and habitat needs of wildlife. You may not know that the properties on Trustlands Trail's western border, which is to say Pioneer Park Place, are long, narrow, rectangular lots with their shortest dimension adjacent to the Trustlands. The significance of this is that development and building has favored the opposite end of these lots that are nearest Pioneer Park Place Road. Thus, the parts that border Trustlands trails are remote parts of the properties, largely underdeveloped and very lightly used. A possible solution: it is established that while the existing lower north-south trail may not see the proposed 2021 trail, given its higher elevation, the proposed 2021 trail then, due to its higher placement, would see and hear the existing north-south trail. Given that, according to the plan, trails are to be constructed so as not to view each other, and since the majority of the abutting properties on the Trustlands west side are in their native state, should the board decide that the 2021 trail not be constructed, wildlife would then have a buffer preserve to retreat to when other trails are highly trafficked. Finally, I ask the commissioners to consider whether the above examples constitute fulfillment of the good neighbor policy the department espouses. This is respectfully submitted. Please, in the future, respond to the points I've raised. Are there any questions?
I have a couple questions. The pictures that you have here, when were those taken?
Yesterday.
Oh.
They are just a sample. I have others, but I didn't want to send a lot of big attachments. I was stunned when I saw this.
I've been walking the trails and I haven't seen that. So that's why
I walked. Sorry, Commissioner. I walked all of the trails save one connecting loop yesterday. And
can I ask another question? You mentioned the locking of the gate. What is the concern there. I'm just curious, has there been a past history of like vandalism, fire, something that is, caused this urgency for it being locked? I guess that's what I'm getting at. What's the history there? Is there something that maybe I don't know about?
Yeah, it's covered in my document. It's also covered in my previous letter, and it's covered in the letter that I wrote to then Executive Director Terry Arnold. There is a history of that area being accessed, especially at night, partying, some non-permitted camping. We've found various amounts of garbage back there. Over the years, that seems to be, it just kind of goes, at a bunch of those events, when it becomes popularized, what we know is that mischief is opportunistic. And when people understand that that area is secured and that ingress at nighttime is not permitted, and everybody knows that that is a reliable fact, those sorts of things tend not to happen.
I have a question for
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
So I guess at this point it's maybe 2 years ago when the last set of trails were put in. Can you think back to those, and does this look like rougher treatment, equal treatment, or less?
I would say that my statement is accurate. It's the same thing that happened before. There was a commission meeting. There was public outcry, very passionate and very heartfelt, because what you're seeing is not stewardship. It is not environmentally sensitive. It is not caring for habitat. It is a tragedy. And it's at the same level. You're only seeing a few pictures. This is widely the state through the most recently constructed trails, and it will take decades for salmonberry and huckleberry to recover if they can. They're submerged in piles of dirt and timber. It looks like a logging road. I do have more pictures. I'm so sorry, because I believe all of you are so conscientious and do care and serve in a public service as electeds because you care. And I'm a very enthusiastic hiker and environmentalist. I want people to enjoy these beautiful public lands, but your stewardship is so critical in preventing any more of this.
Okay, are there any further questions for Mr. Bush? All right, Duggar, were there any further public comment letters that came in that need to be reviewed?
There were no further public comment letters. Those were the only two that we received.
Okay, so we will close the public comment time at this point and move on to the approval of the minutes from our November meeting. Does anyone have an opportunity to review those?
I would only ask that I do receive a response to these points I've raised at some point in the future, soon, I hope.
Okay. Moving forward, thank you, John. I'm going to mute you, John, just so you're aware, just so we don't hear any background noise.
Certainly.
And if everybody else, commissioners, while you're not talking, if you could mute yourselves, that would be great. Okay, moving on.
Okay, so moving on with the approval of the minutes from November. I'm assuming Doug's going to bring those up.
I'm going to bring those up. Here we go.
I'll make a motion to approve the November minutes. I'll make a motion to approve the November minutes.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Eric, aye.
Krista, aye.
Matt, aye.
Jennifer, aye.
Okay, minutes have been approved.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to the treasurer's report. If you're ready, Matt.
I am. None of that. yeah, there you go. So again, we're 11 months. This shows the cumulative revenue and expenses and the overall total relative to the budget projection for 11 of the 12 months of the year. This is through end November. And you can see relatively flat month over month. We're still favorable to budget, just up slightly. October at 54K favorable. And you can flip now to the next slide. You'll see we made up a little ground in expenses. Next slide, Doug. So revenue still sitting flat per month, cumulative at 22K unfavorable. The flat coming from programs that we didn't run or that we ran at much more limited levels. The next slide shows expense control, which was 176, so slightly or slight improvement over October. So the program's expense control actually expected, but we've also done a good job of controlling expenses across other areas, particularly maintenance, to reflect the glitches on the revenue side. Next slide. And again, shows fund balances for plan as they have, of course, the year. We'll have one more month at this level for the reason. And then we'll reset the reserve fund to the forward-looking projection of expenses for 2021. So that'll happen at that of December. Any questions? Okay, if there's no questions, we'll move on to the voucher list. If you can pull that up, Doug, and highlight any change from the previous.
Yeah, give me a second. I think it might be getting close to time to replace the meeting laptop. It's getting really slow. All right, here we go. So vouchers. I'm keeping my camera off notably here because I don't want to mess with the computer transmission and all the stuff that's going on with it. So we had a couple of things that were added. We had a PSE bill that came through for the parks. And so we bought some trash bags and a mop, and I believe that was it. But let me go through. Yeah, no, that was it. Those were the only two changes since the vouchers came out on Friday. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them on the vouchers.
Any questions from anyone on the board? Okay, if no questions, I'll make a motion to approve the vouchers from the M&O of $117, $7.30, and 3 cents as shown.
Eric or Krista, could I get a second from you, please?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Eric. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Eric, aye.
Matt, aye.
Jennifer, aye. All right, moving on to the staff report, please.
All right, let's see if I can get the computer to do it. Is it already open? Yes, it is. There we go. All right. So, programs. We've had, obviously, with the changes to COVID restrictions, we've had very little in the way of programs running recently. That was recently extended through to January 4th. So right now our office is closed and we will not be opening until, at this point, January 5th. Nothing really much to report in programs. Able to offer a lot less than usual, and our offerings are getting very few signups. The winter activity guide is out there. We did do a wreath making workshop. There's a couple of photos there. Last few weeks after the holiday, and facilities and grounds have been nonstop trail construction at the Trustline Trails property. Approaching completion, I actually believe we have completed all of the loops that we had slated for 2020, including the new ADA loop, which I'm going to want to check with Tom and with someone maybe from the RCO on the slope on some of those areas. Because when I walked it, some of those slopes seemed a little bit big, a little bit of a larger slope than what an ADA trail should be. So I'll have to check with that. We may have to level some of those out a little bit, but the trail itself looked good to me. All the feedback from the walkers that we have encountered has been positive as we've been doing the construction, and they're thanking us for expansion. The one concern that we had expressed was signage, and I will be sitting down with Matt and Jennifer on the Trails Committee to come up with some name suggestions. I'm hoping prior to the January meeting to kind of get some name suggestions for all of these trails so that we can name them, put together signage, and put up some permanent signage out there so that we really know we can have like wayfinding signage put in, we can have all of these other signage put in so that the maps will be there, and then potentially even put a map that you can take a picture of the map with your phone, or you can take a picture of the QR code and put that on your phone and it'll pull up the map. From my point of view, it's been a crazy month. I did receive notification from Marty Zimmerman of Foundation that they have secured private donations that were sufficient, from what I understood, to cover the cost of a feasibility study for the aquatic facility. Matt can obviously comment on that, and we'll talk about that in the comprehensive plan section. I have also heard from county planning twice, once to let us know the campground project would need to do an environmental study to determine any impact to the osprey nest on the high school property, and once to let us know that they have made a mistake that we needed a land use permit for the trail work being done. And immediately when we got that notification, we got information out to our guys. We stopped the work that day, and then I turned around to that land use permit in 24 hours with the county planning department. So it was merely a what are you doing kind of general, very high level view, not down to a specifics kind of thing. Was not an issue with anything we've done. The county planning office has been out and looked at what we've been doing and has really thought it was a good thing. The county planner came out, walked the trails, looked at Tom at our progress. I wanted to get a check on especially the last loop they were working on that came down close to the wetlands, and make sure that we were not in any areas that we didn't go any further. If we were going to encroach onto any wetland areas, we did not, and we have not. But the county planner was very excited about the option of maybe working a way to get down in there and creating some interpretive signage and giving people an opportunity to get down in there and see some of that. So that's a discussion for another day, but that is something that came up. Waterman property closing. That's what I've been sucked into for most of the weeks this week. We are right there. I signed documents today. Closing date is actually Monday. Funds are coming from the RCO, and the check should be in FedEx envelope headed to the Chicago title tomorrow in Freeland. And we should be good to go with the county wiring the funds over that we are contributing either tomorrow or Friday, or to be there on Friday. And then the other thing is the state, like I mentioned earlier, the state has extended our current level of restrictions through January 4th. So we are on the current level of practices only for sports groups and groups of 5 or less for any casual use throughout the new year. I have communicated that to all of our user groups. That's pretty much it. Trustland, we did have the concern expressed about that one steep section and that being a hazard. I did have a representative from WTA come out and look at that section as well as walk the trails with me a little bit. She commented the trails looked really good, that she really liked the size of the trails, the width of the trails, and how didn't have any issue with how we constructed them. There was a couple of options for what she suggested we do. That one area that's steep, she did suggest that was a little too steep and we should look at some sort of mitigating way to get around that, or an option for people to get around that. So I've got a couple of things that we can talk about in comprehensive plan about that. Any questions, concerns, thoughts on the staff report from the commissioners?
I'll just say, Doug, that appreciate the hard work on Waterman property, and thanks to Jen and to others who have helped with that. That to me, that's a real kind of grassroots success story for the South End to actually pull that off.
Yeah. So
represents the best of what we. So well done. Thanks on that.
Well, and I want to kind of give kudos to our state grants programs that we've leveraged for this. We are basically buying 48 acres of forest land that is wonderful forest land connected to a trail system that we are getting for a bargain price from our local community. Our 10% is being leveraged, and we are removing it from the forestry program, and it's only costing our park district on that bond issue just under $145,000 for 40 acres, and that includes the removal of it from the forestry program. So it will be done deal at 145. The total cost of that property was approximately $600,000. So we have done a great job in leveraging those state dollars to get this property, and I want to thank those state programs for helping us get this done.
So, Doug, is there any notice then that goes out to the constituency letting them know that this has successfully closed, and some sort of an acknowledgement or congratulations or something that talks about that this has been added to the Parks and Rec, and thank you to the community for their support?
Yes, there is. As soon as we finalize it, I go and I do like an email blitz, and I talk to the paper, and I get everything going. But yeah, that's on me, and I will be doing that because I love to toot my own horn. So I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Thank you.
You bet. Any other questions on the staff report? Okay, good.
All right, let's move on to unfinished business then.
So unfinished business is probably going to be more of the staff report kind of items, just in more detail. I wanted to give Matt an opportunity to kind of talk aquatic facility. So Matt, if you have any further input on what I talked about earlier, feel free to go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, as we talked about last 2 months, one of the next key steps, milestones, is this third-party independent feasibility study, and that whatever firm is selected will go through the kind of the work that's been done to date, the draft plans, ideas, the site, the layout, all the answers. To determine whether they believe the project is feasible, so that we can use that as, another foundation document in a private capital campaign and any kind of public request and grant requests, et cetera. That only issue with that is it's somewhere between a $20,000 and a $50,000 expense, and our grant programs are not well suited to funding them because they're the early stage of a project that may or may not happen, and that's the RCO programs in particular are suited to projects that are much more shovel ready, where the likelihood of them happening is exceedingly high. So it's a hard thing to fund a feasibility study, and fortunately, the foundation, Marnie Zimmerman at the head, has been and launched a capital campaign, and they've, 2 months ago, they've applied for a couple of grants, private grants, and they secured now on the order of $40,000 to fund the feasibility. So just an outstanding effort by them to get that, key milestone funded, and now it's a question of collecting some, putting out an RFQ to 4 or 5 companies that do this. One of them is the company that did the feasibility study for Anacortes Pool, the new Anacortes Pool, and another one is to the company that did the study for the new pool in Bellevue. There's a City of Bellevue pool project going on. And another one that did 2 pools in the last year and a half, one in White Salmon and one in Tenasket. And have been involved at the Oak Harbor Pool as well. So folks with a broad base of experience, but with regional expertise are part of the RFQ group. And I think the foundation's objective is to issue the bid by the end of January. And the expectation is that feasibility will take between 30 and 60 days to complete. It's at that point that we will likely host, and remains to be seen how we're going to do it, if it's go to meeting or if it's otherwise, but host at least one or a couple of public meetings to collect input on the feasibility, and they'll be hosted by the third party. Typically, you know, when we did them before with the master plan, we had them in the parks office, but they led the meeting, and you know, they have their own process for collecting input and getting people to vote on various things and provide feedback on various things. So it's likely that in that February, March timeframe, we're going to be trying to get some public meetings called, and whether it's, like I said, trying to get as many people as we could possibly get into a go-to-meeting call, or, you know, if at point restrictions have eased to the point that we can have some small groups, we can, however, anyway, just be prepared for those to happen. And then by the time March rolls around, we should have a feasibility determination that says this project will work or it won't work. So anyway, just if you see Marnie or members of the foundation, I just encourage you to express your appreciation of them. That's something to pull together from the public. And I think it bodes well for the project if they're getting that kind of support, and that we can build that into a larger capital campaign to supplement, you know, the overall funding of the project. So any questions on that?
Nope.
Thank you, Matt. Great report. Appreciate that.
Okay.
So other things on this. So the other things I had in my kind of comprehensive plan things were a couple of things here. I've been trying to work on the water system management plan this month, but I keep getting pulled away to put out other more urgent fires with other comprehensive plan things, mostly to do with the campground and with the property purchase. But with the campground, the county planning offices has brought the osprey nest that is located on the school district property up, and I'm working with county planners to come to a simple solution rather than the initial full-on environmental habitat report concerning the development of a campground within 1,000 feet of a DNR identified conservation habitat area. At this point, we are currently at a point where I've talked to the county planner's office numerous times. We are now at the point of good news being is that all we need is to have someone, an environmental person, come out, look at the osprey nest, and give a letter of determination that the campground will have no more impact on the osprey nest than the school sports fields that surround it. So I have a feeling that's what the letter of determination will list. I've got a list of environmental people that the county will accept, and I'm going to start that. But that was just this morning, in the midst of signing papers and all that finally came to fruition. So that's good news. We're going to be able to move forward on that, I think, fairly quickly. Waterman property, we have been working. Peggy has done a great job in coordinating with the county and the county treasurer's office. They will be transferring the money that we have from the bond issue over to the closing ASAP, and we will have everything in place for the Monday close. And if not, we can push back a day or two and we'll be okay. We are looking good all around There should not be any hiccups, but if there are, we've got a little bit of play to be able to work with. And like I said, I went in and signed documents today. We've got everything lined up for the money to come in and be used for this. All is good that way. The county planning office, I did, on Trustland Trails, did receive an email regarding that they needed a land use permit, which is the overarching permit for everything. Apparently there was not one on file for putting trails in a trails complex. So we got that done. So now that's been completed. It was very high level overview kind of information. I put it together in less than 24 hours and got it back to them, and they got it back to me within that 24-hour time frame. So we literally stopped work, I think, for less than 24 hours. And you know, things are going really well. I would encourage all the commissioners to go out there. The trails are now, to my understanding, roughed in and fairly well complete. We'll need some finishing on all of them, but the actual trail footpath itself is fairly well complete, and Tom can comment on that in a second. And then after receiving
I just have a quick question, Doug.
Sure.
I just have a quick question. With the errors that the county is making, is that due to personnel changes that are going on between the planning department and?
Yes. The planner that we had was that I had asked, were there any permits, any other permits that we require? He was very new and made a mistake, and that's why this permit was not done. Had he been not new, but again, the county didn't ask us for this, and this would be an overarching permit that would cover the trails we did last year, the trails we did the year before. So this is not something that the county, you know, that the county shouldn't have known we needed to do. This is something that we should have done with the county a long time ago, and the county just, whenever I asked them, do we need permits, they never brought this up. So this is something now that is done. It was a very, very simple document to put together. You know, a frustration, sure enough, on an afternoon when I got the information and had to rush to put it together. But it's done now. It's in, and it was, I think, a lot to do with personnel switchover in the county planning office.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. On the other item, so we did receive the notice of that hazard. I did contact Endurus and was put in touch with a lawyer to review the email and discuss any possible issues. This really, in the entire letter from Mr. Panzer regarding the trails being built too close to neighboring properties, he found that there was no real reason to assume that was a hazard. He said anybody that was leaving public property and going on private property is trespassing. So they're taking themselves into their own hands. There's no liability that transfers to us. He said the only thing that would be any kind of an issue that we should look at would be any areas that were of steeper slope. And so I had WTA, I contacted them, the Washington Trails Association. They sent a representative out to kind of give me kind of an opinion on that trail, to look at it. While we were walking the trails, Rebecca was her name. She was very nice. She came through and commented that our trails were really well done, really well built, nice and wide, easy to get back through. And I said, yeah, these were the arterials. We build two types of trails. We build the wide ones. We would eventually be building single tracks once we get all the arterials done. She did come out and she said that really there was a couple of things that we could do. That one steep section was steeper than they would like. She said that for that short section, and she said it was a very short section. It was not a huge deal, but she recommended either putting in stairs, which I would not recommend. She recommended potentially doing like a kind of like a trail to circumvent that went out. So I'll look at those two in a second, but let me pull up another document here to show you. But she recommended one of two things if we just wanted to have the trail be she didn't say we needed to delete. So this is where this kind of section is. You can see it's kind of steeper there. There's lines pretty close together there. So what we could do is do a trail that's basically a switchback, and it goes from the top over and back to the existing trail. That trail, I don't think it needs to be anything other than a single track trail. However, our guys cannot construct a single track trail quickly. If we wanted it done immediately, our guys could probably do in a morning that out and back trail, following some spots on there that are already fairly well cleared with the mini excavator. The other option she suggested was kind of a trail that looped around somehow, and this is just literally just me drawing lines on this. This is not anything to scale. I would not like say this is how the trail should go. It was just creating an additional trail so that people could avoid that. Now, to me, if we're looking at this particular spot as what would be considered a hazard, the switchback would be the way to say we are addressing that specifically. This other trail might become something where people want to go this way. They don't want to go all the way around this way, or they don't like this trail as much, so they want to do this, and they're going to take that risk. This basically takes the risk and says, we've identified this area as a risk. This is your option if you choose not to walk it. So those are kind of the options that WTA put forward. If it were my sole decision, I would look at doing something like this little switchback. That's a board decision to make.
Yeah, I mean it's similar, Tom, to what you did on the Falcon Loop, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so we have that. If you haven't been on the Falcon Loop, the original construction had that steep section right in the kind of crux of the hillside. And then Tom built, essentially it's a switchback without being a full-on switchback, but it just moderates the grade by taking it up in 2 steps by adding about, 20 or 30 meters to the length of the pass. But to me, I think something like that makes a lot of sense to me.
Any other thoughts from commissioners on that?
So what sort of clearing issues arise with doing the switchback?
I'm sorry, what issues?
Clearing issues, is it just simply going in and creating the trail, or are there some trees or anything that Tom would need to take out?
Yeah, as off the top of my head, I don't know that there are trees. I think that what we could do, if we're looking at doing the same size of trail, which I don't think it needs to be that wide, that we currently do, there might be, there would be obviously more a width. It would be wider. It could be done in a day. But the other thing that we could look at is putting together some sort of a work party and going out and saying, hey, what if we did a switchback, kind of going out and having Tom and his guys flag it and say, this is where the single track should go, and then creating a work party maybe in January where we create that switchback as a single track trail with hand use. And I can talk to WTA, maybe they can bring a crew out and work it with us. So those are kind of the options. I can certainly reach out to WTA and have Tom kind of flag it and go from there. The action we're taking would be something, I don't think it needs to be like for that. It doesn't need to be that big. And I don't think we're in a status of urgency where we need to get it done right now to resolve this situation. So my thought would be that my suggestion would be that if the board thinks that that's the way to go, this was more of just I don't think we want to put steps here because that limits it for bicycle use. It makes it difficult for horse use. My thought was really either the switchback or this kind of additional loop that we create. So I just kind of wanted to get the board's kind of decision on which way you want us to go. I can then go through and say, hey, Tom, can you flag a switchback that keeps it at less than 15% grade, and then he can go through, flag it, and we can then identify this is where it's going to go, and I can talk to WTA, see about getting a group out to do a single track trail.
Yeah, I personally support that.
Yeah, I would be opposed to stairs. I do have a couple questions, and it's actually for you, for Doug and Tom both. And I'm just interested in this because I think it hopefully will maybe answer some of the questions that John brought up earlier. But since there was, and I wasn't aware there was a WTA person walking the trails with you. So this is a person who's obviously knowledgeable of trails and has seen a lot of trails. Was there any indication that trails should be built in a different way from her experience, and Tom, is there something that we're overlooking in the way that you create trails? I'm empathetic to what you have to do to create a trail. So I'm just curious, if you're walking around with that person, what is she telling you?
Yeah, so Tom wasn't with me when I walked the trails with her. It was a quick meeting, and I will probably get another WTA trails rep out at some point in the future as well. Her expression to me was that everything that we were doing was fine. There was nothing that she had any objection to. I did explain to her what we were doing and how we did it with our mini excavator coming through, and that's why the trails were 6 feet wide. And she said, these are great wide trails. These are wonderful trails. She had no issue and expressed no concern with what we were doing. She gave me a couple documents for reference materials, and I will be sharing those with Tom when I get a chance. But no, there was no don't do that anymore, or no, this is horrible, don't do this. She was impressed with the trails that we had constructed.
Well, but you were also on the trails that were built last year. You weren't. Did you spend any time on the new trail construction areas?
We did not go to the new trail construction areas, but again, these trails have only had, the trails that we were on,
right.
Actually, I'm sorry, I'm going to take that back. We did go on the newer ADA loop, so she did see that. She didn't comment anything on the method of construction, just kind of a little bit on the slope might be a little much for ADA, which I was also commenting on. So that might be something that we have to look at, but there was no, this is horrible or anything like that with the ADA loop.
Okay, so she's looking at, it's an interesting point, right? We had similar feedback last year on construction techniques, or a year and a half ago when those trails were built. And I've spent quite a bit of time out there on them. They've, to my eye, have recovered on the margins of the trails. There's certainly evidence of the construction. There's stumps that, cut short, and things that have been cleaned up since that trail construction activity, obviously. But to have that feedback from her on trails, 18 months, 12 to 18 months in, to me that's a good data point. That would indicate that the new trails that we've built will recover in a similar way. Anyway, just one data point.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. So, I just need to get from you guys. Do you want a switchback look, or do you want me, just to kind of make that hazard? This is has been identified as a hazard. Here is your option. Should you not want to do that, we then will put signage here and signage here saying this is a steep area. If you choose to, here is a less steep way to go. In some way, phrase that correctly, and put that up there and get that put together. Like I said, I don't think it needs to be the wide trail that we've got. Matter of fact, it probably would not be conducive to be a wide trail for that. So single track to just get up the hill, and then you move on. Single track, if you get here and you go, oh crap, that's really steep, I'm going to go this way. That's what it's there for. To do this, to my mind, is more, it's just another trail. It doesn't really say this is something that you need to avoid, you need to be concerned about this, or this is something that you might not be comfortable with. Because I know cyclists love this, runners love this hill. They love running up that hill. And so I didn't have a problem when I was out there today walking down it, or the other day walking down it and walking up it. We walked both ways. It was not a problem. But I understand that it could be a hazard, and it has been kind of brought to our attention, so we do need to respond. And this is, I think, in my recommendation would be to do a quick switchback trail to kind of mitigate that hazard.
Yeah, I like the idea of doing something that's the least impactful. Would like to see, when do you think that Tom would be able to get out there to flag it? Could that be done yet this week? And then perhaps those of us that are available could make a trip out there this weekend just to check it out and get you some feedback before the holiday?
I'll let Tom speak to that.
Yeah, I can do that by Friday.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Okay, so we will get that flagged by Friday, and then this weekend, if the board would like to go out and take a look at that, that is on this first loop that we constructed. Let me find it again. Hold on. My computer's being a pain. There we go. Okay, it's going to take forever. All right, forget that. So it is on that first loop. If you're not sure of where it is, feel free to give me a shout, and I can walk you out there, or I can direct you to where it is. It will be out there, and it's pretty evident. That's really at Trustland where we're at. We've wrapped up the basic construction. There is some finishing work to do, and like we've heard from everybody, the public really likes what the trails are. But we're also, I appreciate John's feedback and the other feedback we're getting that this is a concern, and we've constructed the arterials. We're going to continue to work on the cleanup aspect of this, and we'll go through all of that. So that's all I have on comprehensive plan programs. I'm ready to move on to new business. Jennifer, if you are, and the rest of the board is.
Actually, just a comment just on the Trustland Trails and kind of the cleanup that is going to go on, because again, same thing happened a year and a half ago. There's a bit of a chasm between our construction techniques and what the public believes them to be and should be. Maybe some temporary signage that says, hey, we are working on, we're not done. We will be doing some additional cleaning up, maybe removing some of the heavier items that are resting on sensitive vegetation, etc. Something to signal to the public that it's a work in progress. It's not going to be left exactly like that. Do you think that would be of help?
I personally would be, yeah, I mean, I'd be all for that because, keep in mind, there's 3 of us. We're only together 3 to 4 days a week. We did all the rough out for over 1.5 miles of trail in 2 weeks. And the biggest problem we were having was keeping people out of our way while we were constructing. When we got to the back loop, we had it completely coned off, caution taped, and there were parents bringing kids down there with bikes as we're moving around with their equipment. And so late in the week, last week, it just got to a point where I thought going into the weekend, I had to just try and power through and rough it out and get it graded out, roughly, because people were going to be all over it, all weekend long. And so there is a tremendous amount of blow down, old rotten trees that, have snapped off. I mean, it was literally like pickup sticks about the last 400 or 500 feet that I went through there. So right now there is a lot of debris in there, wood debris. We want to get back in there, remove as much of that as we can. But this week the focus was to finish putting all the gravel out on the ADA loops, getting that all rough graded and cleaned up, and working our way towards the back. So we're by no means done. We tried to just open it up and get as much access in there as we could because we couldn't keep people out. There's 40 to 50 people every day as we're trying to work, asking us questions, thanking us, stuff like that. So signage might help. And we're going to get back out there and, get as much done as we can, but we are a small crew and we're working around the holidays as well. So
Yeah, and I do need to get signage out there as well. I know with the new trails, people are going to get lost, not know where they are on the trail map, so we need to get trail maps out there. But yes, Krista, to your point, some temporary signage up there stating that yes, we are not done. These are roughed in. We are still working. We are going to continue to work until we clean up the majority of the big stuff that's there. So yeah, we will keep that going, and I will get that done. I do have to get the GPS unit and map, and I'm throwing it right back to you in a second, Krista. So we'll get that done. Go ahead, Krista.
Yeah, and just I don't know, maybe so Waterman property is about to be finished, and I know that we want to put trails there too. So maybe we can take some learning from this and do a better job of communicating in advance of what our process is, so that we don't have this issue, this communication issue with the public over their trails at that location as well.
It's a good point. Okay. Anyone else, or moving on to new business? All right. Good enough. Okay. New business. So we are at the last meeting of the year. This is our last meeting. Our next year, our schedule. Come on now. There we go. So I have sent out, and in your board packet is the draft schedule of meetings for next year. When I went through, I double checked this with Peggy to make sure that nothing was going to be a problem with getting checks and invoices and vouchers to the county. Everything looked to be pretty good. Nothing coincided with a holiday or caused a problem. So I would recommend that the board, through motion, second, and vote, approve this calendar for next year.
Would someone please make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the calendar for next year.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Eric, aye.
Krista, aye.
Matt, aye.
Jennifer, aye.
Okay, good. That's done. And then our final thing is really just a reminder and maybe a discussion for you guys. At our regular meeting next month, we will hold the election of the officers. And as well, we do kind of go through committee assignments and redo those. Our current officers, Josh is our current chair, Jennifer is our vice chair, Krista is the secretary, Matt is the treasurer, Eric is the at-large board member. That election happens prior to our next board meeting. If you are currently in a role that you like, or you want to keep, or you don't like, and you want to move out of, my suggestion would be that, maybe what I can do is have a discussion with each of the board members individually as to what their thoughts are on where they are and where they'd like to be, and then bring that back to the group as, here's what everybody's, wanting to think of for that, and here's where we are. I know Matt's been treasurer for a while. He's been treasurer for longer than I've worked here, so I know he does a damn good job of it. He might want to continue in that. He might not want to. That's something that I need to have a discussion with. So my suggestion would be, this is more just kind of putting this on your radar. This is coming next month. If you guys want to talk about it, here's your opportunity as a board to discuss the committees and also the board officer positions and whether or not changes should happen, whether you want to change things up or shake things up. So this is your opportunity as a board, because outside of a board meeting, you can't have this discussion. You can't discuss Park District business outside of a board meeting in a group of more than 2. So I leave the floor to you guys to kind of discuss that, and you can direct me to do whatever you'd like me to do with regard to this.
Yeah, I would just on the committees, my input is, since we've just now basically formed them over the last few months and gotten them anything, unless there's just a glaring issue that anybody sees.
Yeah, I agree with you, Matt. I think we need to have an opportunity to to really get into them and figure out what we're doing rather than shaking it up again.
I completely agree.
Okay, so it sounds like a majority has
And
the committees staying the same.
Yes, I would agree as well.
Okay,
yeah,
so
and then,
we can
And
keep-
just as a reminder, that Clinton Community Council has, are we still really calling that a committee assignment, Doug, now that
no, that was just the list from the prior committee. We are basically, for the Clinton Community Council, we are a kind of consulting member of the Clinton Community Council at this point. So if there was a consultation, those are the two people I would contact for that consultation. Right now, we are not attending meetings. We are not an active member of the Clinton Community Council. Okay, so then the other item would be the board officers. Since the four of you have stated that you want to keep the committees the same, I won't even bring those back in January, but we do have to re-elect board officers or elect board officers next month. Thoughts?
Yeah, I like your original, the idea that you expressed at the beginning of reaching out to us individually and finding out if people are satisfied with the board position that they currently have, or if there's something else they're interested in.
I'll say publicly, I'm currently satisfied being the newbie here, so I'm okay where I'm at.
Okay.
yeah, and I am fine continuing as treasurer, and I'm also fine if someone is very interested in becoming the treasurer to turn it over to somebody else. So flexible.
Okay, so I don't need to talk to Eric or Matt. All right, well, that sounds good. What I'll do is I'll touch base with Jennifer, Krista, and Josh, kind of see where their heads are at, and kind of get kind of a slate put together, and hopefully we'll have a quick annual meeting in January. Yes, go ahead, Krista.
I'm sorry, it doesn't have to do with this. I want to go back to Trust and Trails for a moment when we're done with this.
Okay. So yeah, the only thing that I was going to say was I will just touch base with the three commissioners. I'll put together something and we'll bring it back, and hopefully we'll have a nice quick annual meeting next month. So yeah, that's all I had on the agenda. So Krista, if you wanted to go and talk about something else, we can do that.
Yeah, just to address Mr. Bush's comments about the gate and the looks like a pretty wide range of times that it's closed every evening. I'm just wondering what's the current process, or like is there a recommended time, or how does that work? Why is it so? Why does it seem to be so haphazard?
So we have two separate people as closers. One is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Or excuse me, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. The other one is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Both of them have other jobs. So depending on their work schedule, they come out, I always tell them you don't have to come right at dusk because it's a floating window. And this time of year when it's 4:30 and it's dark, they're not getting there at 4:30. So because they do encounter people different times of the season, if you get there at dusk, you could be waiting on 2 or 3 soccer teams to close the park. So I always tell them, err on the side of a little more dark than dusk. So these two individuals, they lock up Community Park, the sports complex, and Trustland Trails. So it's a good hour and a half of driving around. And when you're having to chase people out, it really is a headache. So it's very hard to find people that want to do this position. And so I try and be as flexible with their schedule as I can. I know that Trustland Trails gets locked, if not 99% of the time, 100% of the time, because I unlock it every morning on my way into work. So it is being locked. There was an occasion we had in the last couple weeks. One of our closers got stuck in Spokane with a family issue, and it didn't get closed. So it's very sporadic that it doesn't get closed because I open it every morning.
I don't know, maybe it's maybe something can be looked at in terms of the routes. You know, like maybe they're very used to doing this park first, you know, maybe they can switch up the order. I don't know. Just.
So one guy works at the school, and so he closes the park next to the school, and he doesn't close that park until he leaves for the night. He's a night janitor. So, I mean, again, you know, if you guys have any recommendations of somebody that wants to do this job, point them my way, because this is not an easy job to fill.
Okay. Anything else?
Just a reminder to all the commissioners to send me that email or the voucher approval.
Okay. Yes, definitely do that. That's all we have. Jennifer, we are good. We've completed our business. You can adjourn us at your leisure.
All right, we will adjourn at 7:10 p.m.
Thank you all. Have a great holiday season.
All right, Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy New Year's.
Happy holidays, guys.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
Thanks for standing in, Jennifer. Well done.